Hello and welcome to The Enthusiasm Project. My name is Tom Buck, and this is the very first episode of the podcast version of The Enthusiasm Project, because I've been wanting to start a podcast for like 10 years, since like 2008, 2009, and I figured why not wait until the market is super saturated and then just jump in with no strategy and see what happens. That feels like a really solid plan to me. So we'll see how that goes. But really, if you're familiar with me at all, it would probably be from my YouTube channel, also called The Enthusiasm Project. And this podcast is sort of a companion piece to that I've been wanting to start for a very long time. And there are a few reasons for that. So I'm going to kind of go into those today, sort of lay a very basic foundation that we can build off of, hopefully in the coming, months and beyond. And then see where it goes from there. But kind of like I said, if you wait till everything is perfect, then nothing really happens. So you gotta really just jump in. And I'm sort of embarrassed at how long it took me to do that in terms of podcasting, because I've been wanting to do a podcast for so long, and I have so many friends that have started podcasts, but I kept waiting and telling other people to jump in, and I don't know why. I felt maybe it's just time I should jump in. So anyway, today it's just gonna be you and I having a one-sided discussion about who I am, what I'm doing, but not to make it all about me, because why does it need to be a podcast? I can talk to myself all day long. But hopefully from my perspective, maybe that can be relevant and applicable to your own life experience, ideas, and we can sort of get this thing going together. So that's me. That's the basics of who I am. Beyond that, my day job is that I am a high school digital media teacher. I teach and coordinate a 4-year digital media pathway at a public high school, which is really terrific. And I have my YouTube channel, The Enthusiasm Project, and I have a ton of other hobbies outside of that. So this will be a long pause that I guess I actually need to cut out. I don't want to cut anything out of this because I don't want to have to edit it. So this is so different from recording a YouTube video, which is a good reason why I'm doing it. So here's sort of the thesis behind this specific podcast and why I wanted to start it, which is I spend a lot of my time when I'm communicating, I'm either talking to high school students or I'm making YouTube videos. And those are really specific situations with really specific audiences. And I tend to be a very wordy person, which is why YouTube is great, because it's helped me to be more concise. And I also tend to have a bit of, social anxiety. So when I'm hanging out with other people, I oftentimes then feel, like it doesn't feel the same as when I'm just having thoughts and discussions in my own brain. And so the goal with this is to try to bring those inner thoughts and discussions out, because I think that there's value there, and I think they would be valuable to other people. So hopefully that is actually the case. And so what I mean by specific audiences is, I'm sure you've watched a YouTube video or two in your life, and there's a really specific style of communication that comes with YouTube. And, everybody's a little bit different. So some people are super high energy with jump cuts everywhere, and other people are definitely a little bit more mellow. But in general, YouTube videos tend to be a certain length of time. A long one would be something that's 15 minutes or beyond, with many videos being under 10 minutes. And jump cut editing has become a huge style that's really popular on YouTube, because you just sort of cut out all of your filler words, all of your mistakes, and everything is just quick and clear, hopefully, and straight to the point and on brand. But that's not how the brain works. So even right now recording this, I'm so used to being here recording YouTube videos that I keep thinking after every sort of thought, I can kind of pause and mess up and I'll just cut that out. But the goal with the podcast is not to have to spend a whole bunch of time editing it, but it's to really kind of delve into those unique thoughts and discussions, which, I think is really valuable, but also I think has a lot of therapeutic value as well. And the other thing is, in my time as a high school teacher, My students are terrific. I love them, but through no fault of their own, they're literally like physiologically incapable of paying attention to something for more than 11 minutes max. And that's, 11 minutes is real good. And I teach an interesting subject. So my day is often spent having my thoughts interrupted or truncated or abbreviated. And the beauty of podcasts, why I have always liked them, is that they're long form, or at least the ones I like are long form. They're, can span any sort of genre, but the idea that it doesn't have to be super quick, it doesn't have to be a 1 minute shareable thing, it doesn't have to fit into a teenager's attention span. It can be whatever you need it to be. I know there's podcasts I listen to that it takes me sometimes the entire work week to listen to them because I just keep coming back to them, as I'm driving somewhere or when I'm working on something. And I love that. And so that is sort of the unique experience that a podcast provides, is that it feels very much like a one-on-one connection, and the time isn't as relevant, so it can kind of stretch out and breathe in a very different way than almost any other medium can. And that is something that I'm really, really excited about. So that's a big reason that I wanted to start this podcast. The other reason is to sort of counteract what I'm experiencing on my YouTube channel, which is the goal of my channel is to have a ton of fun and is to be very fun. And it is. It's like one of my favorite things I've ever started, having that channel. It's so great. And I'll explain why I started it and what the original idea was behind that. But no matter what, I think if you start a YouTube channel, and maybe you know this yourself, you can't help but get stuck in the world of YouTube analytics, even if it's just focusing on view counts and subscriber numbers. Because I started my channel going like, I don't care who watches because I just want to make something. And then that's true, but when you spend a lot of time making something and you put a lot of effort into something and nobody watches it, that kind of sucks and it kind of feels bad. So you want people to watch it. And then sometimes people start watching it. You have a video, maybe you're used to getting 5 views and suddenly you have a video that gets 30 views, and that feels good. And, you used to have 8 subscribers and now you have 15 subscribers, and that feels kind of good. And then you keep going and you get to 100 and you get a custom URL and things just kind of keep going and going, and you just sort of want to chase that and grow it. And I think there's a very healthy balance to be struck there. I don't think that wanting to grow a channel is an evil thing, but I also think that it can be kind of limiting because you do find yourself going, okay, this is what I would like to do, but that just does not fit here. And I don't think that's necessarily negative. It's just finding the correct outlet for the thing that you're trying to create. So in this case, a podcast for these thoughts is a much more appropriate outlet and platform than YouTube would be, because this would already be like way too long for a YouTube video. I'd put a mid-roll ad right here. Well, I wouldn't, but you could. So that's kind of, let me think how to phrase this. So this is the opposite of that. The whole point of this podcast, I was talking to my friend Rob, who hosts a podcast with another one of my friends, Amy. We all work at the same school together. They have a movie podcast called Real Disagreement, which is great and you should check out. And it's basically where they pick a theme. Each of them picks a movie that they love that fits that theme that they think the other one is going to hate. And then they basically make each other watch those movies and argue about them. And it's terrific. And I was lucky enough to be invited onto their podcast a few weeks ago. And afterwards, I was talking to Rob and talking about that I wanted to start a podcast, but didn't know what to make it about, yada, yada. And I brought up the idea to him of wanting to start a podcast where like the numbers and the analytics just didn't matter. And we kind of got into that as like, what a terrifying experiment to run in a day and age when those kinds of things are so important. The number of your followers and the number of your subscribers and your view counts and all of those things. And I know from working on podcasts in the past, I haven't had my own, but I've worked on several, that it's really tough to get accurate podcast analytics, even using apps or programs that say they're giving you accurate ones. It's really hard to get accurate numbers, and it's a total crapshoot. And so, what I love about the idea of this podcast is to be an outlet where literally I have no idea how many people are listening, and I don't want to know. Not that you're not valuable for listening. If you're listening to this, I appreciate that. But I don't want to get stuck in that cycle of we need to amp this up and build it more here and do that. Like, I want people to know it's here. I want them to listen to it. But if that's one person, if that's no people, if that's 100,000 people, cool. And I think that interesting discussions and interesting thoughts can come out in a situation where you have no idea how many people are listening to it. And yeah, I mean, that's basically it. And so the next thought that I went over in my brain was, why then? Why not just keep those thoughts in your brain if it doesn't matter how many people are listening to them? And I don't really have a specific answer to that other than they tend to get lost. You know, when you have your thoughts and your discussions and your shower arguments in your brain, they're over and you kind of forget about them, or you come back to them later and repeat them over and over again. But it's kind of nice to really communicate them, get them out, and help formulate them in an effective way. So that is a big goal of why I wanted to start this podcast, is to get all of those ideas out, have these long form discussions, and then maybe even formulate and workshop some things that can make their way in more concise versions to YouTube videos that you could watch in a more polished, clear way. But this is much more imperfect, much more off the cuff, and much more sort of organic, I guess you could say. So with that being said, let's kind of dive in and let me explain to you, if you're not sure, what exactly the Enthusiasm Project is. And the reason that I want to explain that to you is because I think it will help me figure out the answer to that question. I had a discussion, that sounds so official. I had a phone call with somebody that I met who also has a YouTube channel. His name is Kevin Shen. He has a really awesome tech. No, I'm not going to say that. It's very similar to my channel, where it's sort of the life philosophies mixed in with tech reviews and stuff. It's like doing what I do, but better. So go check out his channel. But we had a long phone conversation last week, and we were trying to figure out, what the value is and what the call to action is for our channels. And we agree that we're both kind of looking for that. And even though I've had mine for a year and a half at this point, I'm still not 100% sure what the call to action is, at least in a concise thing. So what I'd like to do now is explain to you why I started it, so that maybe you'll understand the value that I'm trying to give. And then as we go through this and as I go through it, maybe I'll have a more concise way to explain that. But really what it comes down to is the idea of the Enthusiasm Project came up in late, I want to say December of 2010. So it's January 2019 right now. December of 2010 was a very long time ago. And that idea, nothing really happened with until 2017. So it was really my perfectionist tendencies getting the best of me, where if something's not perfect, I'm not going to do it, which meant I never did it. And that kind of sucks. And it goes totally against the entire ethos of what the Enthusiasm Project should have been about. So it kind of stems from two places. One is that I am kind of obsessed with the fact that we're all gonna die, which sounds super bleak, but really kind of isn't. If you ever saw What About Bob with Bill Murray and Richard Dreyfuss, Richard Dreyfuss's son in that movie is 9, and he's obsessed with the idea that everybody's gonna die, and so he can't enjoy life because it's all pointless. And I don't have that outlook on it. I have the outlook where, since everything is so temporary and you can't get your time back, it's really kind of scary and anxiety inducing how you choose to spend that time. And the idea behind the Enthusiasm Project was that there are so many interesting ways to spend that time. And it's a very valuable resource, so how you spend it is very, very important. Especially when, things like depression and suicide and mental illness are huge and seem to be, I don't know if they're becoming bigger and bigger issues or if just more and more people are talking about them, which is good. But it sort of feels like the idea of enthusiasm is a good antidote to that issue. So what I mean by that is in 2010, I was finishing up like my teaching credential program and trying to figure out, the economy sucked and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do for a career, and there was all these things happening. But one of the things I realized was that enthusiasm was by far my favorite character trait in a person, because once you have enthusiasm, everything else falls into place. You don't have to worry about having knowledge or skills or anything like that, because those will take care of themselves. If you're enthusiastic about something, even if you don't know a lot about it, it's going to be a lot easier for you to naturally seek out more about it and to naturally figure out what you want to do. But if you don't have that enthusiasm, which is closely tied to, curiosity and those sorts of things, it doesn't go anywhere. You can provide you can provide everything you can to get somebody to, have that spark, but it's not going to be there if they don't have some sort of intrinsic level of enthusiasm for whatever the thing is. And so my idea was that there are so many things in the world that are so interesting. I mean, from, huge topics to just small little hobbies and things to be curious about, that I personally do not understand the idea of boredom. I appreciate boredom, especially when you're a kid, because that's what helps you be creative. It kind of like spawns that creativity to ask questions and to do things. So I think there's a huge value to boredom. But especially once you move past that, maybe later in life, who has time to be bored? Like, are you kidding me? There's not enough time to even at all be interested. That sounds wrong. There's not enough time nearly to explore all of the things that I want to explore in life. And so I wanted to share that idea and that feeling with as many people as possible, because I feel that helps you make the best use of your time, and your time is all you got. And once it's gone, it is gone. So that was sort of the idea of the Enthusiasm Project, and how I was going to put that together, because now we're getting into like early 2011, was I wanted to put together a blog, because that was the thing. YouTube was for cat videos, and it was like impossible to upload good video in a reasonable amount of time. So blogging was where it's at. And there's still blogs. Like, blogs are still great. And so what I wanted to do on my blog was to profile people who I thought who I thought demonstrated really good qualities of enthusiasm. And maybe they're a business owner, maybe it's a hobby, whatever it is. I just wanted to share the stories of people who were doing things they're really passionate about, not necessarily for the money or the notoriety, but for the sake of doing a thing and making a thing and putting something together. And I put together my list of people, and I wanted each thing to be very well written and have all these beautiful photographs to accompany it, maybe some video interviews or whatever. But it just never really materialized. I don't know why. I think I just got scared of taking that first leap, and then you have to tell someone, hey, I want to start a thing. And I don't know, there's a lot of fear and anxiety and stuff that just sort of put it on the shelf. Plus, I was starting a career at the time as well, which is like a super easy excuse, but it's probably not like a good excuse. So that sort of sat on the shelf for another like 6 years, until the summer of 2017, when I decided to revisit the idea, because I was wanting to start a YouTube channel, because it was 2017 and that's what you do. And for someone like me who's into digital media and video and photo, YouTube was just, oh man, for years I had wanted to start a YouTube channel, and I just didn't know what to start it about. And so I was trying to take this idea and formulate it, and I was like, I could do these beautiful video profiles, these pieces on these people, and feature them, and it'll be so wonderful. And then I was thinking, okay, here's my list of people I could approach. Scheduling is a nightmare. Maybe I could do one video per month, but I want to do a lot more. And then the same thing started happening, where I was waiting for everything to be perfect. And so I could tell that nothing was going to happen. And so I started just uploading a couple random videos just to sort of start building my creative muscle. And then that was the same time through YouTube that I met my girlfriend, Heather, who, if you don't know about her, you'll know a lot about her by the time we go through this podcast. But she was the one who really encouraged me to not wait until everything was in order and perfect, and to just jump in. And that was probably the best thing I could have done was just jump in. I did a 30-day challenge where I made 30 videos in 30 days. And by the end of that, I was so much more comfortable. It's not necessarily that I understood the thesis behind my channel that much better, but I had a style, I had some skill sets, and it was just so much better. And then the other big reason that I wanted to start a channel was because I had been teaching digital media for 5 or 6 years at this point to high school kids, and I hadn't made like anything in that amount of time. And I was making all these kids make these movies and these projects, and they were getting recognition and awards. And, at least once a week, somebody would ask, "Oh, Mr. Buck, like, what are you working on?" And I would come up with the lamest, most cop-out excuse ever, which was, "Oh, it's my job to help you work on your projects," which just means, no, I'm not doing the thing that I'm asking you to do, which, to be honest, is just bad teaching. Even though I was explaining things well and the classes were good, that's just not the way to be the best teacher you can be. I mean, regardless if it's digital media, English, math, or whatever, I think that if you're a teacher, the best way to be as great as you possibly can is to actively participate and practice in the subject that you teach. And definitely you should be doing the thing that you're asking your students to do, or at least have recently done the thing that you're making them do. I think that's kind of basic. And I wasn't doing that. And I was so embarrassed of that. Maybe I would do one video per year, and I'd work on a ton of projects for like our school district and our school sites, but those are like basically like corporate videos. They're not my specific ideas. They just sort of had, sort of my visual style, but that was kind of it. They didn't have a ton of personality. And so when I started making my YouTube channel, I realized, oh my gosh, I have no personality. And I even made a video that's like how to kill your creative voice in 5 easy steps, which was basically just make stuff for other people and ignore all your ideas. And I realized there was even like I couldn't speak in any other way other than like this corporate narration where everything is very vanilla and inoffensive. And it's not that I wanted to be super offensive and throw down a bunch of profanity or anything, but I definitely wanted to be able to share my own perspective in my own way without fear of what that would mean. And I had just lost that ability. And so the YouTube channel was a great way to sort of rebuild those muscles, which I had completely lost. In addition to, building skills, doing something really fun. And it kind of became clear that if I wanted to profile people who were being enthusiastic, and that was going to be a challenge because they, this just be through scheduling, that at least I'm stuck with myself 24 hours a day, and I can make a video whenever I want to make a video, basically, outside of my work schedule. So I just knew that if I sort of shifted it a little bit and started, I wasn't even planning to be in any of the videos originally, but if I kind of did shift the subject matter more towards me and my perspective, that I'd actually be able to do a lot more. And that ended up being very true. So right now, let's kind of bring this together in a way that makes sense. Right now, if I click over to my YouTube channel, and go to, which is youtube.com/theenthusiasm project, like, comment, subscribe. Sorry, I have to say that. Ooh, I think you heard that music. Don't worry, it's royalty free. If I go to my YouTube channel, I go to the About section. Right now, pretty much what it says is that my name is Tom Buck, and I'm super enthusiastic about a lot of things. I'm also a high school digital media teacher with a lifelong interest in video, photo, and tech. Basically, I've always had, quote unquote, too many hobbies. But finding ways to connect the dots and learn new things has always been incredibly fun. My goal is to create and share interesting ideas, stories, and more. Pretty simple, right? And that's pretty much it. That is, as of right now, the basic thesis behind my channel. It's sort of, I am exploring things through my lens of what I'm interested in, which does tend to focus around, tech and digital media and photo and video and just all of those things, because that's what I've always been interested in. But the goal is, in addition to sharing info and ideas about those things, is to be an example. Because I remember personally watching so many people on YouTube, or even reading so many people's blogs way back when, and thinking like, man, I wish I could do that. I should do that. And if I can do anything that's going to help somebody feel that their time has value and then want to do more with that time and explore something that they're interested in, especially if it's a creative endeavor, then I think that's really, really worthwhile. And that's kind of the very succinct YouTube version of where I'm at right now. But I would definitely love to formulate that into something that kind of goes into what Kevin Shen and I were talking about last week, which was, he said that it sort of sounds like your channel, meaning my channel, was about the ethos of wonder. And it sort of is. Like, you could kind of easily replace enthusiasm with wonder, and it would be a very similar thing. So that I think was a very astute observation on his part, and I'm trying to figure out a way to maybe make that a little more concise, and then make it really clear how I want to bridge the gap between what I'm doing and what the audience is thinking or feeling or doing, and try to connect that a little more. So I'm hoping that through doing more of these podcasts, I can kind of develop that. I can just develop that and you can come along for the ride, or, at least listen to it while you're doing other stuff. But if I jump back to, I do have a website because, it's 2019. So enthusiasmproject.com/updates is a blog. I sound very much like I'm promoting something, but I'm just letting you know where I'm reading from. And my website was sort of just a landing page for a long, long time, because I really just wanted to send people to the YouTube channel. But recently I decided to open it back up. When I first started my YouTube channel 2 years ago, I started the website, put up some blog posts, and I thought it was going to be real interesting. And then it just became a lot of work, so I just simplified things. But I recently started revisiting the website just for fun. And so I opened the blog back up. I sort of added some new posts, mainly about the videos that I've been making recently. But the fun part for the website is that I just left all the stuff that I originally wrote 2 years ago when I started it. And so compared to my YouTube description now, I actually wanted to go back, and when I first opened the website and started the channel in 2017, this is sort of where I was coming from. And I think if you see those two things, you might have an idea of what my goal is. So the very first post, the oldest post on my website's blog, is from July 1st, 2017, and it is titled, "The Project Begins." Hi, my name is Tom, and this is the Enthusiasm Project, the end result of an idea that I've been kicking around for the better part of a decade. As much as I've always wanted to do this for many years, it's easy to find plenty of reasons not to. There's no time, I don't have the resources, what if everyone thinks it's stupid, makes fun of me, and it's middle school all over again? But I couldn't escape a very important and stark realization. Life is short, and time is limited. I haven't read this actually since 2017, so that was my first time I've read that since. This thought is both terrifying and thrilling. I may not know a lot, but what I know for sure is that I don't want to reach a point in my journey where I look back and wonder, if only, knowing full well that I'm at a point where it's too late to do anything about it. So before we go any further, here are a few ground rules to get us started. I think this is still very much in line with how I'm feeling. So here are the ground rules that I laid out in 2017. What the Enthusiasm Project is not. It is not perfection. My goal is not to bombard you with stories from myself and others who've got it all figured out as they reminisce on their journey and make us all feel lesser than for being at a different point in our own journeys. I think I misspelled journeys there. Everybody struggles. The goal here is to share stories and ideas that inspire others to make the best possible use of their limited time on this little floating speck of a planet. The story profile process is also a good opportunity for the subject to reflect on their journey and passion, and perhaps gain a better sense of understanding. So obviously that was geared towards a lot more when I wanted to do profiles. The Enthusiasm Project is not advertising. There are no ulterior motives here. My goal is not to lure you in with shiny and inspiring ideas in the hopes that you'll purchase a product or sign up for a subscription of some kind. There are no paid endorsements or products covertly placed into anything here, which leads me to the last thing that the Enthusiasm Project is not, which is a source of income. Rest assured, I'm gainfully employed outside of this endeavor. This is purely a passion project for me, and while it may be nice to be able to recoup some of the operating costs one day, that's not the goal. I promise you right now, on day one, to keep this project pure. As an added bonus, not relying on advertising or income from the Enthusiasm Project means that I can remain in total control, cue evil laugh, helping to ensure that it provides as much value to the community as possible. And that actually makes me really happy to read right now, because I haven't read any of that since I wrote it. And even though I haven't read it in that long, I feel that I've kept to that, just because that is very much kind of a core philosophy. Perfection is really important because I don't want things to have to be perfect. I have super high standards. I want them to be as good as possible, but I also want to be able to make stuff. And if you wait for it to be perfect, you'll never make it. So much like this podcast, I still agree that this is not perfection. Same thing with advertising and income. And right off the bat, I definitely want to address those. Right now, there are no ads on my YouTube channel, and it will probably stay that way for the foreseeable future, unless advertising money could bring in a really meaningful amount of monthly income. Right now, I have almost 3,500 subscribers with 144 videos, and if I had advertising turned on, it would be somewhere between $100, maybe $120 a month, which for me isn't worth it. I hate ads. They're terrible. YouTube does not let you decide who puts their ads on your videos, and it's annoying. I don't want you to come watch something that I'm excited I made, and you have to sit through an ad for some company that neither of us are that interested in. And I do want to keep it pure, and I don't want to have to worry about what I share in my videos. Is that going to, upset an advertiser or get me demonetized or whatever? Not that I'm super controversial usually, but I don't want to even have to worry about those things. So if you just take that off the table, it makes things really easy. Now, if there was the chance to turn on advertising and bring in an extra $1,000 a month, yeah, I might revisit that, because that would be, a life-changing thing. But for now, there's no advertising there. This podcast is 100% ad-free, if you couldn't tell, because ads are terrible. So this podcast is brought to you by me and my job, because that's it. It's simple. I don't need to sell you a mattress or web hosting or whatever. And a source of income, I think that is important. I've been able to bring in some revenue from my YouTube channel through Amazon affiliate links, which I think are the best compromise, maybe outside of a Patreon if you're at that level. But affiliate links just let you, they don't affect the customer really, because other than having to click through the link, nothing is different. No prices are different. You do not have to aggressively talk about them. They're just sort of there in the descriptions of your videos or on your website or whatever. If people click through them, you get a commission. If they don't, you don't. It's really simple. And so the reason I started using those was I talk a lot about expensive stuff on my channel, like cameras and camera lenses. And a lot of times people will say like, yeah, I just bought this really expensive thing because of, your review on it. And I'm like, well, if I'm selling lenses for Canon, then sure, I'll take a little bit of a commission there. But it's always very much in the background. And lately, I shouldn't say lately. I've had Amazon affiliate links since May, I think, of 2018. And I just got my tax form today, January 2019. And I made about $840 last year, which is great. So it ends up being roughly $100 to $150 a month of supplemental income for, doing nothing really, and for not invading somebody with crazy advertising and stuff. So I think that's a beautiful win-win. Stuff like that can easily cover the costs, that I put into the channel, but also like I just love doing it. And it's, I also play guitar. I'm looking at my guitars right now. That is a very fun hobby, but just because I have to buy new strings and some new equipment and stuff from time to time doesn't mean like, oh my God, who's going to pay me for this? Like, that's just the cost of the hobby. And so YouTube is sort of the same thing for me personally. I love it. I have a blast doing it. If it brings in money, that's awesome. But it's also like I look at it as a hobby where, if I need to pay for a subscription for royalty-free music, well, oh, cool. That's what I need to do the thing that I want to do. And that's fine. That's totally fair. So looking at where a lot of YouTube channels and podcasts are right now, I mean, it's all about that advertising. It's all about that income. And I will definitely explore that a lot in future episodes of this, but I have a very specific thoughts on that. But I also know that they're not necessarily inherently evil, and that in a lot of places they make a lot of sense, and there are some people who do utilize them really, really well. But I also know that there are a lot of people who do not do that, and it just degrades everything. I am personally very tired of downloading a podcast and having to skip through the first 12 minutes because it's just ad reads. And then you listen to the podcast, and after 20 minutes, there's another 4 minutes of ads. Like, come on. Like, I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that, because if you're at that level where you have a massive audience, your operating costs are substantial, and if you have a staff to pay, see, this is where it goes into like, let's keep it this way. For me, at this level, where literally I'm the only person in this room pushing the record button and talking into the microphone, I don't think there's a lot of crazy operating costs for this podcast, which means we don't need to worry about advertising. Great. Yikes. Really went down a thing there. Okay, so on that blog post, the first half of it is about what the Enthusiasm Project is not, and the second half is, okay, so what is the Enthusiasm Project? I'm going to drink water slightly to the left of the microphone right now. Okay, sorry. So what is the Enthusiasm Project? And I put 3 things. The first one is the Enthusiasm Project is genuine. Everything here and everything connected to it comes from a genuine place. There are no ulterior motives or false pretenses. The ideas behind this project are values that I strongly believe in and feel are worth sharing. So whatever the subject, format, project, or story, please know that what you see is what you get. And I still agree with that very, very much. It's fun to revisit this as I'm starting something new with this podcast, just to make sure everything does align with my values. But that's a huge one. Everything is genuine. Authenticity is another value, in addition to enthusiasm, that I place a huge amount of importance on. And I think that's there's nothing. I'm not trying to lure you in or sell you anything. It's just genuine. And I even said the idea behind this project. I like calling this YouTube channel and this website and this podcast the Enthusiasm Project, because one, there's sort of a pun there, like a wordplay thing, because you could say, I project enthusiasm through the Enthusiasm Project. Okay, you can unsubscribe now after that. But the idea of a project also, to me, implies something that is in a constant state of being worked on and developed. It's unfinished. And I think that that's really important, because I like the idea of making things. I like the idea of working on things. I just like that. And so the fact that you and I are working together to make a thing is really cool. And I want to keep doing that. So what else is the Enthusiasm Project? It is positive. So it's easy to criticize or tear down, but everything here originates from a place of positivity. There are many reasons to feel jaded and stressed by the world and all of its tragedies and struggles, but my goal is to provide an outlet from those feelings, a place to embrace a carpe diem-esque mentality while sharing and experiencing fun, creativity, and positivity. Hooray! It literally says hooray there. And I think that is important. It's so easy to tear stuff down and to criticize others and to make fun of others, and it's very easy. Negativity is easy. It's the path of least resistance. It's, and I even subscribe to several different like commentary channels on YouTube, for example. And I think that the people who do it really well put a lot of effort and creativity into it. But part of me always wonders, like, I am just watching somebody criticize someone else. I could be out just doing something else. And, that's kind of, I like the idea of positivity. I like the idea of, even if something's not perfect or not working right, it's better to find a way to make it better instead of just tearing it down. And I think that that's important. And then last but not least, the Enthusiasm Project is decidedly experimental. Walt Disney once said that Disneyland would never be complete. So much in the same spirit, my goal here is to work at creating new, fun, and innovative ways of sharing these ideas while connecting with anyone and everyone who wants to be a part of it. There's also just something genuinely exciting about the freedom of experimentation that comes with a do-it-yourself attitude. I couldn't have said it better myself, except that I did say that myself. And I love that. Again, that kind of goes with the idea that it's always unfinished. It's a project. I do want to experiment. I like trying new things. It's fun that, a year and a half after writing this, that I'm starting this podcast to try a new thing. And you never know, I've learned at this point in my 33 years of life that it's very valuable to just explore what sparks your interest, even if it doesn't necessarily seem related to something else that you're doing, because you never know how the things will connect and how the dots will align in the future. And I have like almost infinite examples of that from my own life. And that is something that, at the very least, I want to keep doing, but also, I want to be an active practitioner of, so that way it's a good example for anyone else who may be feeling like I feel and how I did feel, where you're sort of thinking of starting something, but aren't 100% sure about it. So, there's a whole thing down here. There's a conclusion. It says, and finally, whether this is hugely beneficial thing for many people or a massive train wreck of a failure, I promise that I will always be ridiculously enthusiastic about it, and I hope you will too. So thank you for joining me on this journey. Oh, that sounds so nice. That's the end of the podcast. It's the end of my blog post from 2 years ago. So it's kind of cool to go back and read that, because it makes me feel good to know that that it wasn't one of those things that I started and then just sort of gave up on along the way. I'm sure we've all have, lots of examples of that in our own lives, projects and ideas where we start something, but it doesn't turn into anything. We don't follow through with it. And it's nice to not have to deal with that anymore. So that it's so hard. It's so hard to put a microphone in front of your face and talk about yourself for 45 minutes and then be like, I'm not a narcissist. But I hope it's really clear that is not why I am doing this. That I want to share my thoughts and ideas, and I genuinely hope that they're relatable and accessible to you. And, the only way that I can really do that as an individual is to put all these thoughts and experiences through my lens and my perception, and then, share them with you and see how you filter them through your lens and your experience. So I'm trying to get used to the idea of, talking for a long time about thoughts of my own without it being too self-indulgent, but we'll get there. I don't know if you can hear my chair squeaking. Just by the way, my setup that I'm using is just my Rode video mic, which I feel like it doesn't pick up my like mouth sounds as much if I'm far away from it, but if I'm close to it, then it sounds really clear and really nice. But then you get like the sounds. I'm sorry that I did that, but anyway, the world of audio production, at least personal like do-it-yourself audio production, where I'm doing every single thing, is still relatively new to me. So I'm figuring that out along the way. So I apologize if there's any unpleasantness with the audio here. Anyway, kind of going back to the idea of starting this podcast and wanting to share ideas long form. So right off the bat, the first episode I know is going to be probably more rambling than most. And down the line, if I look at like, what would you like this podcast to be in 3 months or 6 months or beyond? I would definitely like to have a little bit more structure and, possibly even like segments, just because I really like that. But I don't want it to turn into, at least with me producing everything, I don't want it to turn into a massive production, because I just don't have the time, honestly. And what I want is, if I want to put a big production into something, that's what the YouTube channel is for. That's where pulling out the cameras and the lights and editing the B-roll and the music and all that stuff, like that's what that is for. And I love that. This is more for just a long, free-flowing, conversation regarding ideas. And so it's something that I want it to be simple and easy for me to produce, so that I can produce it regularly, with it being a really fun, beneficial thing and not something that I dread or something that becomes a source of stress or work. But, where I'm excited to go talk into the microphone because it's like those shower arguments. And I'm sure we're not even necessarily an argument, but sometimes, you find yourself in the shower for like, you need to clean yourself for like 5 minutes, but then you're in the shower for like 25 minutes because the rest is just like thinking about stuff. In college, I can't tell you how many papers I wrote in the shower where it's like you can't come up with your conclusion or your thesis or whatever, and then you just sort of, you get the idea there. I get the same thing if I go on long bike rides. A lot of times I'll leave with a problem, go ride around for a couple hours, and come back with a solution to the problem, just because you let your brain go, you explore the ideas, and then you come up with some kind of solution. And for me, when I'm doing that, I'm often having a conversation with someone. I just, I pretend as if I'm trying to explain this thing to another person. How would I do that? And that often helps me solve the problem, but it's all in my own brain. And this is basically the same thing, except that, another person can actually hear those thoughts, which is really cool. And I guess, if you want to know, like, what's the point of doing it? Well, I guess that's the point of doing it. And that's, that is my main goal here. So I'll probably, make sure that each episode has a specific theme or a purpose at least, and we'll explore that in a relatively loose structure. Because I want to make sure that if I'm talking to you about how your time is valuable and you give me your time to listen to this podcast, I don't want to waste your time because that would be massively hypocritical. So if you spend the time listening to this, I want there to be something of value, whether that's something you can take and apply directly to your life or situation, or at the very least, if it's just hearing somebody else kind of go over some of the thoughts and ideas that maybe you've had yourself or you've been working through yourself, or if it sparks an idea that takes you somewhere else, just so that it's some way beneficial, so that after you spend, the hour or so listening to it, that you're like, hey, that was time well spent. And that's a win right there. That's all I really want there. So in terms of frequency, this will be interesting. What I plan to do is at least one per week, because that is easily manageable, especially if there's not too much production. But ideally, I would actually like to do 2 or 3 per week, just to really kind of keep the ideas churning, because what I would expect is that the podcast would be a place where I can work through ideas that I need to work through. And, I want to be able to do that more than once a week. And and I want things to be current. So I don't want you to listen to something I recorded. If you go back and find everything, that's awesome. But when I'm sharing something with you brand new, I want it to be current to that point in time. I don't want it to be like, hey, it's January, so here's a podcast I recorded before Thanksgiving. Because I don't know, there's just something about that. When something is released, I want it to be as current as possible. And then as time goes on, it can find its place in the archives, in the annals of history, I guess, as you might say. So once a week is the goal. I would like to be able to do possibly beyond that, but I don't have a workflow for this at all yet. So this is very experimental, and I'm curious to see. So I'm planning to just edit it in GarageBand. I was looking at Anchor to distribute the podcast, but I don't think I'm going to use Anchor, just because I was reading a few things about it where the terms of service are a little vague, and you don't necessarily, once they distribute it, retain full ownership over your stuff. And obviously this is just pure gold. So why would I want to give up the ownership rights to any of this? So what I'll likely do is find a way to host this myself through the enthusiasmproject.com website, which means that you can just go to enthusiasmproject.com/podcast, and all the info will be there. And then you'll be able to download it, subscribe through, iTunes or Spotify, or basically wherever you get your podcasts. But that's something that I'll need to figure out. And then the editing process should be relatively simple. I apologize if there's, I made the huge mistake of like eating lunch before this. And so I feel like I'm almost burping like every few seconds. I'm like holding back these belches. But I don't want to have to cut stuff out. I don't want to have to do what I do with my YouTube videos and go through and slice them up into 150 little clips and jump cuts. I want it to be much more natural because this is the platform for that. So, this isn't YouTube, and I want to respect the platform and engage with the platform of podcasting on its own terms. So if it's a little rough around the edges, and in all honesty, at least right now, episode number 1, I feel like that's a benefit, and I feel like that's a good thing. And then also, as much as I'm sure if you've made it to, almost an hour, clearly you must love the sound of my voice. But I don't want it to just be me every time. So when I can, I would definitely like to pull some people in here and, share in a discussion, in a long form, casual, comfortable discussion. So that's something I'm trying to do, is make it so that the podcast is comfortable, that it's casual, that it's easy, that it's the only difference between doing the podcast and not doing it is that there is a microphone turned on, is really my goal. But in terms of comfort and attitude and authenticity, I want everything else to be exactly the same. So that's a big goal. Luckily, I have access to Heather, who you could follow at Heather Just Create on all of the things, specifically YouTube, especially. I'm probably going to make her my first guest, whether or not she wants to be, even though she already agreed. But she provides a lot of insight, and the best part too is, as encouraging as she can be, she also has a totally different perspective because she is, even more entrenched in the world of digital media in a lot of ways than I am, but it is also her source of income, and she is a business owner in that field. And so she has a different perspective and different ideas that sometimes go against my own. But that's what I really like, is being able to always see that other side, so I don't get stuck on my own point of view and my own argument, but I can understand the other side. And then, you can always find value in the opposition. Not that she's the opposition, but, for example, I hate ads, but, half of what she does is marketing. So, there's a way to do it that's valuable and that's done well. And, I think that me learning more about that and having those discussions is just going to help me and hopefully help you, and then have, her better understand my point of view, which might end up being able to help her do what she does. That's why, conversations and discussions are so important to have, and so important all of the time. So you can definitely expect to hear other voices here as time goes on. But I guess that definitely pretty much wraps it up right now for this first episode. I don't like I kind of joked about at the beginning, I really don't have a strategy here, so I don't really know what the call to action is. If you found this podcast, that's terrific. So if you listen to the end of it, even better. So hopefully you want to listen to more of them, which would mean however you found the podcast, save it or subscribe to it and keep listening to it. Remember, my first thing was that we don't want to pay attention to the analytics. I don't want to pay attention to the numbers and the analytics. That doesn't mean I don't want people to hear it. It just means I don't want to become concerned with, oh my gosh, this episode was an hour long and it gained, 8 subscribers, and this episode was an hour and 10 minutes and it lost 3. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I want to just make the thing, put the thing out into the world, and then hopefully people find it. And, one thing that I've always said is, if one person gets value from something, that's still an entire human being, and that's a pretty big deal. So if this is something you enjoyed, then definitely, come back, listen to more. Let me know what you think. You can reach out to me. My name is @SoDarnTom on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, the main thing to find me is youtube.com/The Enthusiasm Project. You can also reach out on enthusiasmproject.com. Wow, there's just so many places where you can go to find stuff. I didn't realize how digitally connected I was. So, with that being said, I do not have an official way to end this podcast. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you really enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. It's audio, so I'm not going to see you at all, but thanks for listening. I have a good day. Thank you.